The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of Nadia's small but warm kitchen. The aroma of cardamom tea filled the air as she hummed softly, her hands trembling slightly with excitement. Today, her only son Ayan was bringing home his fiancée, Sara, the girl who had captured his heart. "You're loved as a DOYS of chills, biryani, sheer kurma, and fresh parathas." After years of loneliness since her husband's death, Nadia felt her home would finally be alive again, filled with laughter, warmth, and maybe even the sound of children one day. She had dreamed of becoming a mother-in-law who treated her daughter-in-law like her own daughter. When the doorbell rang, Nadia rushed to open it, her heart fluttering. Ayan stood there, tall and handsome, his arm wrapped around Sara's shoulders. Sara was stunning, her beauty sharp, modern, and confident. "Ammi, this is Sara," Ayan said proudly. Nadia smiled warmly and reached out to hug her. "Welcome, Beta. You're already part of this family." Sara smiled politely, but her eyes scanned the small, old-fashioned house, the faded curtains, the simple furniture, and Nadia noticed a flicker of discomfort. It was the kind of look that stung quietly but deeply. Over the following weeks, Nadia tried to bond with Sara. She cooked her favorite meals, offered jewelry from her own wedding, and spoke to her with affection. But Sara remained distant. She preferred her phone over conversation, online shopping over helping in the kitchen, and spoke of modern families, where in-laws live separately. Nadia pretended not to notice the growing coldness. She told herself Sara was just adjusting, that all relationships needed time. But the truth revealed itself one evening, an evening Nadia would never forget. It was 2 days before the wedding. The house was filled with laughter, guests, and the shimmer of golden lights. Nadia, dressed simply in a cream shawl, walked toward the sitting room with trays of sweets. She stopped at the doorway when she heard Sara's voice, sharp and clear. "Honestly, Ayan," Sara said, "the greatest gift for our wedding would be if your mother just disappeared from the family. I can't live in a house where I feel suffocated by her presence." The tray in Nadia's hands trembled, a few sweets falling to the floor. Her breath caught in her throat. Ayan didn't say anything. He looked down, silent, and that silence was louder than any insult. Sara noticed Nadia standing there. For a fleeting second, guilt crossed her face, but then she shrugged it off, almost smirking. Nadia set the tray down quietly and turned away. Her heart felt as though it had been crushed beneath her own feet. That night, in the solitude of her room, she wept silently. She had lost her husband years ago now. She had lost her son too. But even through the tears, a strange strength stirred inside her. She didn't know it yet, but this heartbreak was the beginning of her rebirth. The morning after the wedding felt quieter than ever. The laughter, music, and fragrance of roses had vanished, replaced by an emptiness that pressed heavily against the walls. Nadia stood by the window, holding the corner of her shawl tightly. Outside, Ayan and Sara loaded suitcases into their new car, heading to their honeymoon. No one had asked if she wanted to come along. No one even looked back. She told herself not to cry. She had already shed enough tears. But when she saw her son, her little boy, wave casually before driving off, she felt her knees weaken. It was as if years of love, sacrifice, and sleepless nights had evaporated into that single moment of indifference. When the car disappeared down the street, silence swallowed the house whole. Nadia walked through the empty rooms that once echoed with Ayan's laughter. She ran her hand along the old wooden table her husband had built, remembering how he used to call her Dil Ka Sukun, peace of his heart. A bitter smile touched her lips. That night, she made her decision. She packed a small bag, a few clothes, a framed picture of her husband, and a Quran. The next morning, she placed her house keys on the table with a note. "May your new life be full of joy, my son. Don't worry for me. I will find my way." She left quietly, without a sound, her heart heavy but her spirit unbroken. Nadia rented a small, dimly lit room in the old quarter of the city. The walls were cracked and the air smelled of dust and rain, but it was her own, her space to breathe, to heal. She began volunteering at a women's shelter nearby, helping widows and abandoned mothers like herself. Every day she found a piece of herself in their stories, women forgotten by their families, yet still holding hope. It was there that she met Mrs. Rehman, a retired lawyer with kind eyes and a sharp mind. The two women became friends quickly, sharing tea, laughter, and stories of pain that turned slowly into resilience. One afternoon, while sorting through old papers, Mrs. Rehman noticed a name, Nadia Bano, wife of late Tariq Bano, printed on a property document. "Nadia, do you know what this is?" she asked, adjusting her glasses. Nadia shook her head. "Just some old paperwork from my husband's office. I never understood much about it." "Mrs. Rehman's brows lifted. "Your husband left these in your name. Nadia, you own this property, and not just this. There are share certificates, too. You have wealth you never knew existed." For a moment, Nadia couldn't speak. Her hands trembled as she stared at the documents. Years of humiliation, of being treated as a burden, began to dissolve. That night, she lit a candle by the window, whispering a prayer for her late husband. "Maybe you knew this day would come," she said softly, tears glistening in her eyes. For the first time in years she smiled, not because she had found money, but because she had found purpose. And silently, destiny began to turn in her favor. The discovery of her husband's hidden property marked the turning point in Nadia's life. What began as survival soon transformed into purpose. With Mrs. Rehman's guidance, Nadia visited banks, signed documents, and transferred titles into her name. For the first time, she was not a background figure in someone else's story. She was the author of her own. The property she inherited was worth far more than she ever imagined. Old land in the city's growing district, long forgotten shares that had multiplied in value, and a small textile unit her husband once co-owned. The timid widow who once trembled under cruel words was now learning the language of contracts and investments. But Nadia didn't chase luxury. Her heart, still humble and kind, dreamed of giving back. "If I have been forgotten, let me remember those who are still unseen," she said one evening as she and Mrs. Rehman sipped tea by the window. That night, the Nadia Welfare Trust was born, a foundation to support widows, single mothers, and abandoned elderly women. The first time her name appeared in the newspaper, Nadia almost couldn't believe it. Founder and chairperson, Mrs. Nadia Tariq Bano. She pressed the clipping to her chest and whispered, "You see, Tariq, I finally did something worthy of your love." Months passed and her foundation flourished. News channels began covering her work. Her soft, spoken kindness and integrity earned her the admiration of the city. She became a symbol of quiet strength, a woman who rose from pain without bitterness. Meanwhile, across town, life was not as perfect for Ayan and Sara. Their dream home was now a burden. Ayan's business had suffered huge losses. Sara's lavish lifestyle and arrogance drove them into debt. The very people they tried to impress now whispered behind their backs. One afternoon, while scrolling through her phone, Sara froze. There, on the trending news page, was Nadia's face, graceful, smiling, standing beside city officials at a donation ceremony. The headline read, "Widow who was once homeless now helps thousands of women rebuild their lives." Sara's fingers tightened around her phone. "Ayan," she shouted, "look at this. It's your mother. She's rich, famous how?" Ayan took the phone, his eyes widening in disbelief. Guilt and jealousy twisted inside him. "She never told me about any of this," he murmured. Sara's tone shifted, smooth and calculated. "Maybe we should visit her. She must be lonely, and she might forgive us." 2 days later, they arrived at the Nadia Welfare Trust office. Nadia stood at the entrance, dressed simply yet radiantly, her presence commanding respect. "Amy," Ayan said softly, eyes wet. "We made mistakes. We miss you." Sara smiled sweetly, holding a bouquet. "We were foolish, Mother, but now we know your value." Nadia looked at them both, the son she once adored and the woman who once wanted her gone. Her eyes were calm, but beneath that serenity was something powerful, understanding, wisdom, and quiet justice. She smiled faintly and said, "Perhaps destiny wanted you to learn the value of what you threw away." In her silence, they felt the first tremor of the reckoning yet to come. The day of the charity gala arrived, a grand event hosted by the Nadia Welfare Trust to celebrate 5 years of service. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, elegant guests, and media cameras. Nadia stood at the center of it all, graceful in a soft ivory sari, her silver hair tied neatly, her calm smile concealing a lifetime of sorrow and strength. It wasn't just another charity dinner. It was the night she would reclaim her dignity completely, not through anger, but through grace. As the guests took their seats, Ayan and Sara arrived, dressed to impress. Sara wore an expensive gown borrowed for the evening, her face painted with a charming smile that barely hid her greed. Ayan looked nervous, guilt shadowing his eyes. They had been struggling financially for months, their car sold, their house mortgaged. Sara had insisted on attending the gala, hoping to win back Nadia's favor, or perhaps a share of her newfound wealth. When they entered, whispers spread through the room. "That's her son and daughter-in-law," someone murmured. "The ones who abandoned her." But Nadia, ever composed, walked toward them with the same gentle dignity that once made her seem fragile. "Welcome," she said softly. "I'm glad you came." For a fleeting second, Ayan thought he saw forgiveness in her eyes. It gave him hope. Sara stepped forward eagerly. "Mother," she began, her voice dripping with practiced sweetness, "we're so proud of you. The whole city admires you. We were young and foolish before, but we've changed." Nadia looked at her, not with anger but pity. "I believe people can change," she said. "That's why tonight I want to share something special." The lights dimmed, and a video began to play on the large screen. It showed women from her foundation, widows, mothers, and grandmothers, speaking tearfully of how Nadia had given them homes, education, and dignity. The room filled with applause and emotion. Then Nadia took the stage again. Her voice was calm, yet it carried through the entire hall. "Once, I was told that the greatest gift I could give was to disappear. So I did. I disappeared not into darkness, but into purpose. And in that silence I found myself again." The crowd fell utterly silent. Sara's smile faltered. Nadia continued, "Tonight I dedicate my entire estate, every rupee, every property to the women who were told they were a burden. This trust will carry on long after me. As for my family, my blessings are all I have left to give." The applause erupted like thunder. Ayan lowered his head, tears streaming down his face. Sara's expression turned cold, the kind that comes when greed collapses into emptiness. As the evening ended, Nadia walked past them, pausing only to say, "The greatest gift I ever gave was my absence. It taught everyone the value of my presence." She stepped into the cool night air, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The stars seemed to bow to her, a woman who turned betrayal into grace, pain into purpose, and revenge into peace. And in her quiet smile lived the kind of victory that no wealth could ever buy.